So we kind of get used to seeing maybe like an ulterior motive behind this, and like, what's the hidden agenda? Why are all these tactics being used? And we know that businesses are about making profit. And so sometimes that kind of taints the way we think about giving. Sometimes we hear stories about people who take advantage of other people. Or that you give money to someone because they're hungry, and you hear the story about someone who went and bought alcohol. And sometimes that can jade us from giving in general. But the Bible encourages us to give. So when Jesus says it's more blessed to give than it is to receive, we know it is true. Because Jesus said it. And he says that there are blessings and that there is joy and that there is true happiness and peace that we get because we give. So why are Christians that give so much have this happiness? What makes giving so good? Well, we talked about, like I said, grace a few months ago. And you think about people who are graceful and how they just give generously. But in our world today, it seems strange to see that practice. Even just a little while ago when we did our block party, I know I got questions from some people when we were out handing out the flyers, and questions even from people when they came onto the lot. Why are you doing this? And there have been other instances when we've done things at church and you're just giving things away. People are like, why? I can't understand why you would just give stuff for free. It doesn't make sense. But let's look at our passage. In 2 Corinthians 8, 1 through 5, we're going to have to move through this a little quickly, but there's a lot of good nuggets in here I want to bring out. It says, "Now, brothers, we want you to know about the grace that God has given the Macedonian churches. Out of the most severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity." I love Paul's remarks here. First he says that the gift that came from the Macedonians to these Christians that were in need was totally unexpected. He was surprised. In fact, the gift did not go to what he thought it might be. It was well surpassed. And he talked about that the grace, first of all, that God has given. He recognized that even though the Macedonians that were giving, the gift that was given to the Macedonian churches by the brothers, he recognized that it was the grace of God that was being demonstrated by the brothers. And it says their overflowing joy, and then it almost seems like it's contradictory or kind of the opposite when it talks about their extreme poverty. They were overcoming with joy. They had the joy of their giving, but they gave out of their lack. And yet they still were rich with generosity. And they gave. And then he goes on and says, the privilege of sharing in this service of the saints. They understood that it was a privilege to be used by God in this way. They were honored to be used by God. And it truly is a blessing to be used by God. And listen to what it says here. It says, before they even got to the giving to the brothers, they gave first of themselves to the Lord. And I think that's where giving starts. When we first recognize, as Pastor McCall says, that we are not really owners of anything, that all that we have belongs to Him.
Yes.
And so when we give ourselves to the Lord, we recognize that all that we have is His. And so it's nothing to give what is His to someone that has need. And demonstrating God's love. So first of all, why is giving so good? One, because it helps keep us in a healthy balance. Look at 2 Corinthians 8, 7, just one verse down. It says, but just as you excel in everything, in your faith, in your speech, in your knowledge, in your complete earnestness, and in your love for us, see that you also excel in your giving. And I think that's awesome because they were, as Paul was telling them, he was encouraging them, they were excelling in everything. They had faith. And it's awesome to have faith. Paul talks a lot about faith. Faith is great. Faith is really important. But James says that faith without works is a dead faith. And so you can have all the faith in the world and saying you're trusting God, but if you're not demonstrating that in any kind of way, it means nothing. To say, oh yeah, you're hungry, well go and be fed, and I have faith that you're going to get something. When you can give, James says that's a dead faith. And even when you think about in terms of our global mission in Africa, to say that you wish the Malians well, to say that you wish the Bambara people well, that they will, hopefully they all receive the grace of Christ, and hopefully they all come into a knowledge, a working, saving knowledge of Him, and not to do anything is nothing. To have the faith and not to do anything is dead faith. But he commends them for their faith. They had that. He commends them for their speech. He says said that they could speak well. They could articulate perhaps the things of God. They were trustworthy. They were speaking the truth. They did not gossip. They did not spread lies. They were known for speaking the right thing. And he said, you're doing well in that. You're doing good in that. But simply having that and not demonstrating the love of God and not giving is dead faith. He said they excelled in knowledge. They knew the things of God. They could articulate and know so many deep things. And they probably had awesome Bible studies and all those kinds of things, which are wonderful. But he says, all that is great. But you need to also excel in your giving. It helps keeps us in balance. It helps keeps us from having all this knowledge and just having a fat head. And walking around like, yes, I know the Bible, and I've read it 10 times, and I can... No, it keeps us from getting that way. Because when we give like Christ gives, he changes our heart. That conforms our hearts. It keeps our head from getting puffed up. It keeps us our faith from being dead, and it keeps our speech from being empty. Why is giving so good? Because in giving, we model the grace of Jesus Christ. Look at verse 9. It says, for you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, so that through you his poverty might become rich. Jesus. He didn't come to earth because he was obligated to come. He wasn't coming down from heaven and be like, okay, Lord, okay, Father, I'm going. When you see the face of the baby Jesus in the manger, he's smiling.
All right.
I allow a little time for you guys to. But Jesus desired to come. And while he was here, he gave of himself. Not just when he died on the cross, even though that was an awesome time of giving, but all throughout his ministry, he was giving.
All right.
All throughout his life. He says he didn't even have a place to lay his head. He was so focused on ministering to the needs of people. And then as Reverend Francis reminds us so much, even while we were yet sinners, even while we were yet plotting against him, even while we were yet talking about him, even while yet people were saying false things about him, he was still giving.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What an awesome God. And so in our giving, we model the same grace. We model that same grace that Christ had for us. Lastly, why is giving so good? It's good because it counteracts selfishness. It counteracts us wanting to hold on to what we have. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and go down to 10 through 14. It says, last year, you were the first, not only to give, but also to have the desire to do so. Now finish the work, so that your eager willingness to do it may be matched by your completion of it, according to your means. For if the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. Our desire is not that others might be relieved while you are hard-pressed, but that there might be equality. At the present time, your plenty will supply what they need, so that in turn, their plenty will supply what you need. The goal is equality. And so he talks about why is giving so good. He talks about the fact that last year they made an agreement. They made a decision that this is something that we are going to do. And that's easy to do at the time, to make a commitment and to kind of start along the way. But Paul said somewhere along the way, you started kind of slacking off a bit. And sometimes that happens to us, sometimes not even intentionally. I kind of thought about this myself when I read this passage, because there was a year that my wife and I both got raises on our job, and so we were tithing, on our gross income and going along. But when we got raises, we didn't make the adjustment.
All right.
You know what I mean? And so we were tithing on what we made the previous year. And even though our signs go up, we didn't go back and make the adjustment. So sometimes it happens, kind of just happens accidentally, or you get some extra income or something, and you're just like, well, I'm just writing the same check, that I always write. And in the back of your mind, God's hitting you like, you maybe you need to get that. And you're like, well, no, So sometimes we do that, and so he's saying here, you had the intent to do it, but somewhere along the way, say, well, now I can buy a few more things. And like maybe God doesn't see the little bonus I got right here, and he knows I'm still giving on this, and so I'm going to go and I can buy this with that. He says, don't get that way. Don't